Welcome to the Cowfish Show, an exploration in human evolution, raising consciousness, creating happiness, fulfillment, and love, one soul at a time. I'm E.L. Brooks, a newly awakened soul on a mission to help people find their happiness and truth.
And I'm Lindsey Kimura, a happiness explorer empowering humans in wisdom and understanding. The universe united us to share our passions. Welcome to our show.
Hi, guys. Something just happened. Pretty funny. Welcome to the show. My name is Eric.
And I'm Lindsey.
And it's raining outside. How was your commute?
It was actually pretty smooth compared to what I thought it would be.
Yeah, I actually thought I was going to get here a little late because, Californians don't know how to drive. I'm from the East Coast, so we're all used to that. But yeah, and actually, it's so funny. It's like I'm feeling pretty good. Like normally I would feel, like the rain kind of affects your mood a little bit.
Yes.
And I remember being young, like it really, really used to affect my mood, which is the reason why I ended up going to college, the University of Miami, sunshine and palm trees. But that doesn't happen anymore. So I'm feeling good. Hopefully you're feeling good as well.
Yes,
right?
It's an emotional cleanse.
Exactly, yeah. It's going to rain all this week. We tape in advance, but our sponsor, Magnum Watch, is hosting an event this weekend, Saturday, being hosted actually by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a strongman competition, so I don't know why I'm mentioning because we don't do Facebook Live feeds, but just a little shout out to our sponsor, Magnum Watch.
Yeah, and we can do a live feed for it.
Yeah, not just any watch. Once again, all of our listeners get 25% off using the coupon code Cowfish25. We also want to thank everyone for all of the kind words for our first episode that we launched last week, which was pretty cool and nice to see all of the, the responses. And I got a lot of private messages about, certain things that people were suffering from and, going deep into that stuff and trying to help people recognize certain things. Also want to give a shout out to Morris Media, the place that we do our recordings. I've known Felicia for quite a long time, and it's kind of really nice to connect with her again and on this positive journey and venture of ours, right?
Yes.
So season 1, episode 5, we're getting into it. Living the dream versus living your purpose. Do you want to kick us off there, Lindsay?
Yes. So living the dream versus living your purpose. What does that mean? So first, I think that we have to talk about the dream as society's dream. So in every part of the world, there's a different dream. Even within parts of the world, different areas, regions, neighborhoods, communities, there's a different dream. So one story I love to share with people, back when I was working in corporate and I was a little bit unhappy in my job, getting ready to move on. And one of the admins, she was the office manager, she said, "I am just so happy at my job." And I'm like, "How? You've been here so long. Like, how could you do this every day in this gray office?" And she's like, "From where I come from, which is somewhere in Central America," she said the type of job that she does is what people dream of having, that security, the financial income, the stability. So that really shifted my perspective that my dream is not always what somebody else's dream is. But today on this show, we want to talk about the different dreams, or so defined by cultures, and then your purpose. So I think one of the most important things about differentiating between society's dream and your dream is to start to look at and sift through what you've taken on in your own self, in your subconscious. Like Eric, you talked about on a prior episode, how we absorb so much when we're younger, we don't even know it's ours. And then how to sift through what has been absorbed into us and actually piece out what is our purpose and our path. And oftentimes people's paths fit very nicely aligned with society's path and that current. But then other people's paths, they're more outliers, maybe artists or people who are doing very eclectic different things than societal norms. So I think it's important to honor the whole spectrum of purposes and how purpose is manyfold. So we don't just have one singular purpose. We have many purposes. And just to embrace that within ourselves and to allow the space and the nurturing, compassionate attitude towards self and others in letting room for that growth and evolution to occur. So like we spoke about in episode 2, judgment, not judging ourselves or others for what their path is, or paths, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to elaborate on what you were saying, it is everyone's dream is different. But, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to talk about the American dream for our audience. And the American dream is kind of fleeting because, I think it would be safe to say that everyone would agree that to some degree, the American dream represents luxury cars, luxury home, financial security, the ability, financial freedom to go on vacations, and just really kind of, like they say, the quote, living the dream, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, a lot of that is fleeting because, I'll call it in the aha moment that we'll talk about later, it's a push-pull. It's something that we're being pushed towards because of the American standards of what we should be doing versus what our innate journey is as human beings. We have 3 different journeys that I'll talk about. But in the beginning, we are like you said, we're born and we're being pushed and conditioned to follow these particular paths. And I like to talk about some stories about people that made it in the American, according to society's, standards. There's one thing that etched in my mind with about Lionel Richie. He talked about when he was at the pinnacle of his career, he received a Grammy, Academy Award, and he recalls at his speech, he was, talking, and he says, I was on the mountaintop, and I was sitting there, and I was like, this is it. This is everything that I've dreamed of. Mm-hmm. And he felt empty. And then the lesson for him to learn was that he missed out on the journey, like all of the creative compositions and all of the collaborations that he was getting into. He was not necessarily present because he was chasing this fleeting dream. Same thing with me. I left the music industry at the height of my career to a certain extent because I had this innate feeling in me that wasn't aligned with the industry. One of my favorite shows is The Red Table with Jada Pinkett. She talked about when she made it, and she was very successful, that she felt the same emptiness, that lack, right, that we talked about in previous episodes. And she spiraled into major depression, and she had to find herself. And all of that is the push-pull kind of thing that that I say that, society pushes into chasing the American dream, which is very fleeting, but our soul wants to pull us into the direction of our purpose, and which is the path to happiness, and which is the path to our destiny. And so when we feel that that feeling of lack, that feeling of discomfort, which made you like look at the lady and be like, "Oh, are you kidding me? This is like your dream job or whatever." But that may have been her purpose. That may have been, there are like outliers that are very fulfilled living the American dream to a certain extent, because it does align with, they happen to fall into a career or something like that does align with their purpose. But the majority of us are kind of working for the weekend, and we're not aligned with our purpose. And so when we have that inner conflict between purpose and being pushed into the dream, that's what creates the the suffering and all this other stuff, because our soul like knows that there's more, that it wants more, and it needs to follow it. And that's why you have these people that abruptly quit their jobs. I had my stockbroker, I remember, went to the Burning Man and met this lady and came back, and he was like, "I'm in love. I'm gonna sell across the world." He sold everything, sold his interest in his practice, and he just and I asked him why, because I've always been a questioner. I'm like, dude, why are you doing this? Like, and he's like, I'm not living my purpose. I know like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, so I like how you said push-pull. It reminded me of a current, and how a current, there's a strong current that is present in society or in your particular culture. And it's our choice. Do we want to stay in a line on that current? And if it's feeling right, maybe you go on it for some time. And then when it's not feeling right, you have to move to change currents or surrender to go with the flow. So I like that. And then another thing you said, Eric, about outlier made me think of who's really the outlier. Like, is it the normal people that fit in, or is it the kind of eccentric people that are a little out there and have a different path?
Yeah.
So since the society model is changing and everything is just in constant flux, it's interesting to look at like what really is an outlier, and it could be both.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the source of it all is, when you're pushed into certain things by society, that's, once again, going back to first level consciousness, that's tied to our lower self. There is really absolutely no fulfillment. And so when we're pulled in the direction of purpose and our destiny, then we are aligned. You call it divine alignment. There's other things that I say is like kind of course correction. So a lot of times when we are chasing certain things and we feel that, why me? Why isn't this happening for me? Why isn't, why didn't I get that promotion, or why didn't I do this? It's, I call it course correction. It's like there's certain things that will happen in your life, certain challenges that we look at as hardship, but they're actually course corrections to move us, because the universe always wants to move you towards trying to find your purpose. And I'm going to tell like a little story of just an example of hardship versus course correction. So there's a lady that was delayed on a train, and when she was delayed on the train, instead of looking at it as a situation, she was inspired to start writing a book. Wow. But 2 years later, she was only 3 chapters in. And so she then accepted what life had to give and offer her. She ended up getting married. She ended up having a child. She ended up moving. That marriage didn't last. She ended up getting divorced and having to move back. And then she became jobless, and she was a single parent. And that's hardship. That's like, that's dire for a lot of people, right? There's like, wow, I moved for this particular person. I was in love, and they left me. And it's rumored that this person spiraled into, had contemplated suicide. But at the same time, that person then went back and started writing the book. And then 2 years later, that book became what we know today as the Harry Potter series.
Wow,
and so
I didn't know that.
That's J.K. Rowling's, yeah. And so if you look at it, everyone in first level consciousness will look at her journey as hardship, right? Oh my God, she did this. But I look at it, and when other people that elevate, they realize the universal laws, that it's course correction that happens, that gets implemented into your life. And the universe is always trying to steer you back onto the path. And I like exactly the way you said, the current. I look at it as swimming up against a stream, right? And so we can talk about the aha moment, which is we all have 3 journeys. The human has options of 3 different journeys. So when you're born, you're connected to the soul. You're a miracle if you really think about
what has to happen for you to come into being.
Exactly. That's a miracle. And so you're one with the source, right? But as you get implemented into society and you fall into society's dream, the first journey for all humans is away from the source, right? And so that's first level consciousness. That's the birth of the ego. And the birth of the ego doesn't serve us. We know that, right? And so you start to go through life, and the universe wants to reunite you with your soul. And actually your soul wants to reunite with the source. So your second journey for some people, not all, because some people just reside in that whole first journey away from the source. Your second journey is towards the source, movement, a journey towards the source, and that's where you find spiritual love, spiritual connection, inner peace, happiness, and all that other stuff. And then the third one, which is really, really, I think it's a journey for a select few, is a journey within the source, like the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, where you're actually become one. It's pure consciousness. You're one. You're serving, and so when you are, journeying away from the source, I look at it and I use the analogy of the salmon. I don't know if a lot of people know about the journey of the salmon, but the salmon actually gives birth in fresh water, and then it leaves and journeys off into the sea. But in order to be reborn and give life, it has to make that journey, which is really, really far. And a lot of the salmon endure hardship getting back to the source of that fresh water. And if they're literally swimming upstream, but when they get back to the source, they're able to give birth to and restart life all over again.
Yeah, I love that, Eric. It made me think of, I pulled my Oracle cards for 2019 and the salmon came up.
Oh,
and
really?
so I researched it, and I was like, well, tell me more about the salmon journey. And one thing I read about is that how they can gracefully, how they jump. So you can navigate gracefully. It's not just put your tail back and forth, hardship, like swim upstream. You can actually navigate. And that makes me think of how we can choose different ways to get to the same place. So you can take the stairs down, or you could jump off 2 stories. You're going to go from A to B, but it's just how you get there is so important, I think. So the idea of making graceful, wise choices when possible, in that if we could be aware of that, can be powerful. Because then it's all about navigation and the journey, because we may see our destiny, we may know our destiny. And when you were talking about source, knowing that the source is within us, and also the source from which we came, which is one and the same, I think, divine, the inner divine light, and then the universal divine. Thank you for sharing the salmon. And Eric and I actually just finished The Alchemist. I reread it. And Eric, was it the first time you read it? Or?
That is the very first time that I read it, and it was amazing. And actually, that's one of the takeaways from this episode is that I think that everyone should read that book, because it really, really outlines what life is really all about. Like I think living the dream is actually living your purpose. So everyone that actually is aligned with their purpose seems to be, happy, fulfilled. You always hear these terminologies of, back to the grind, right? Or people that are working, that are doing things that just to make money. They're not fulfilled. And I never hear that from people that are aligned with their purpose and are, making money through their purpose. And like you said earlier, everyone's life and abundance or their dream is completely different. I think through our journeys, we see certain omens and angels. And I remember seeing this bartender this restaurant I used to frequent at, and I was a little judgmental at first, but looking back at him, I always noticed, I talk about certain people, they had a certain look in their eyes, and I was like, wow, what is that look? I want that look. And he was a bartender, and I got to know him, and his life was all about surfing. So he bartended at night, and he surfed during the day. And, I was in my whole, chasing for material wealth and all this other stuff. And I was just thinking, wow, this guy's really, really cool, but I don't really think he's applying himself, That was that whole, push into the standards and conditions. But at the same time, I knew in my head and in my soul that there was something to him, right? Fast forward later, where I'm talking about abundance, is this guy was offered a job to manage a hotel. Because, as a bartender, you have conversations with people. And he was a very cool person. And I spoke to him a lot. So I'm sure he, spoke to him. And it was a pretty well-to-do restaurant. And so there was this mogul that came in and just gravitated to him and offered him a managerial job at this paradise place where, ironically, they had the best surfing. And so for him, it was like he was living his purpose, which was, surfing, and I guess he was helping people learn how to surf as well. He was bartending, so I was judging him during his day job, but his overall purpose and his overall lifestyle, he was happy, he was fulfilled, and he created abundance in his life where he actually went and managed a restaurant, a hotel, but he did it on his terms, where he was able to surf and, create that balance of life that so I say that because we are all states of selves, and just because you're in a certain place right now doesn't mean that defines you. I think really in order to live a fulfilled life, you have to find your purpose. You have to move in towards that purpose, and you have to have that purpose in your life. And it doesn't necessarily have to make you money, but it has to, you have to tap into that. And when you do tap into it, I do believe things manifest, and you do create abundance. But everybody's abundance looks different.
Yes. And I think that when you are trying to find your purpose or purposes, one way you can do it is by looking at what comes easily to you and what you enjoy doing and enjoyable. Because I talk about this in my book, but why humans are here, right? We're here to play, to create, to learn lessons, to unite, to find unity, that integration. And I think that some tools to raising your vibration, just like the bartender surfer you told us about, Eric, is to, no matter what it is, if it feels good to you, maybe being a parent feels great, being involved with your kids more, leading some charity events, whatever it is, just keep going with what feels right, not what society says is admirable or that you should be doing. And that's a way to really get on track. And talking a little bit about more tools, I would say that everything we need already lives within us. Our destiny's within. We have the wisdom within. It's just like polishing gold, the tarnish off gold. We're just clearing subconscious blocks. We're clearing as subconscious comes into our conscious and we become aware of what's blocking us. We're able to clear those out. I know energy healing is a way to do it, but there are other ways to do it where as long as you're aware of it, you can see it. You just sit with it, you observe it, and eventually it will subside or be released. And in addition to clearing subconscious blocks, I would say, again, leaving yourself that nurturing, supportive environment in which you can evolve and grow. And I love what you said about not having a title on yourself and not having that pressure to be a CEO or making six figures or the perfect parent or all these other expectations, but being okay with what you are. And sometimes you're titleless, and that's okay. And you're in your purpose, your element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like exactly what you said about the polish part, because I forgot one of the little notes that I have here. Polishing often, like you said, it is all within us. And the Sufi founder, and I wrote it down because it's hard to pronounce his name, Hazrat Inayat Khan, has a famous quote: "As the soul is covered by 1,000 veils," and that's exactly what you said. That when we are in first level consciousness and we're being pushed into this society's conditions to conform, we start to develop these filters and these layers that actually bury the soul. And that's our journey away from the source. And then when we start to move towards the source, it is like polishing, but it's literally like stripping away those layers of veils to expose and get deep into what our soul purpose is, and our soul, what what our soul yearns for. So
Yes, it's like the purification process, the unification once again, because think about unity or connection. Two things can't connect deeply or in an aligned manner if there's a bunch of stuff in between. So I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we'll do our takeaways because it's about that time. I gave my takeaways. So
You did.
Eric, you conclude us here in up 5.
Okay. So the takeaway, the aha moment, like I said, is that living the dream is really living your purpose. There is only one dream, and that is to follow your purpose. They say, especially in the book, The Alchemist, it's like the closer you get to realizing your destiny, the more that destiny becomes your true reason for being, for living, because you are uniting with who you are, and we're all individuals, and our purposes are different. And they say that we have 3 unique gifts. I'm still trying to find my third, but yeah, once we tap into that, then we do feel fulfilled, and I think a lot of that comes with age and wisdom. As I was talking to a lot of people, which made me move into my certain direction when I was talking to grandparents, people in their 60s and 70s that were talking, and I was hearing regret. There's one individual that's like, investing into the cannabis business right now because he's like, I played it safe all my life. And he's like, damn it, I don't want it, I'm going to take chances.
A risk.
Yeah, I want to take chances. Like, and he's retired now, and he's like, well, what? I have nothing to lose, right? So he's energized. And then on the flip side, people that follow this society's dream. I remember hearing a story this is sad, of a person who retired because that's what society tells us, work hard, save up, retire, and live the life that you are meant to live, right? But that's not being present.
Retirement is, I am not in agreement with retirement and that whole concept.
So there's 2 things, and I know we went off track there, but this is kind of important. 2 things. One, I heard a story of a lady who retired at 65 and literally died 2 weeks later. There's a friend of mine who worked with a lady who's retired that now wants to come back to work because she's been retired for 2 years and she's bored. She has no structure. She has no purpose. She has no kind of guide. And so she's like, she's bored, and boredom, as we know, like leads to a whole bunch of suffering and weight gain and all
purpose.
this. Yeah. And so she really wants to come back to work. And I was trying to tell my friend to kind of convince her to like tap in, like, this is a time where you need to, discover self-awareness and figure out what's, you have that luxury. So why would you want to jump back in?
Right. And I would say just do what you love right now. Don't wait till you have money or security at 65. I remember seeing a tour group when I was traveling in my 20s going in the same church I was going into, and I'm like, thank God I'm young and I'm running around by myself right now, because if I waited, I couldn't. I'm doing it now. So my thing is just like do it now.
Exactly.
Don't wait.
So back to the book again. We're going to recommend The Alchemist. I think you should read The Alchemist.
Yes.
I'm going to read one little passage here from The Alchemist. It says, "Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him. We speak of them only to children. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction towards its own fate. But unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their destinies and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out indeed to be a threatening place."
That's a perfect quote to leave our audience with.
Yeah. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.
Like us on Facebook. Give us some feedback. Also, give us some suggestions on certain topics that you'd like us to cover that may be troubling for you and that you need to tap into and you need answers to. And we'll be happy to consider those.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next
Appreciate
time,
you
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into the Cowfish Show. Check back for future episodes on raising consciousness, creating happiness, fulfillment, and love.
And remember to find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at The Cowfish Show.